Very windy today.
Yep. Close.
Everyone okay? Hayden, thanks very much. Well, thanks very much for joining us here today in Bentley. We're opposite the Pfizer office, which behind us, their supply and manufacturing hub here will close in 2023. I'm joined by Karen Chu, the South Metropolitan Liberal candidate, Tony Kristovic, the Shadow Minister assisting the Leader on Health, and Amanda Sue Markham, who's the Liberal Party candidate for the district of Victoria Park. The Liberal Party has a plan to help create 200,000 new jobs in Western Australia. Creating 200,000 new jobs is critical to making sure that WA fully recovers, and is informed by the Australian Bureau of Statistics that say that we need to help create 200,000 new jobs to make sure WA prospers well into the future. What we learnt during COVID-19 was that WA is not alone when it comes to the global supply shocks for critical and strategic goods that help keep our state safe and secure when it comes in particular to health and other important critical goods here that are manufactured elsewhere. What we found during COVID-19 is that WA bore the shocks just like many other places around the world when it came to the disruption in supply chains for critical goods that helped keep our state safe. We're announcing today a $50 million critical manufacturing and strategic fund to help support small and medium businesses in Western Australia in securing important critical manufactured goods right here in WA to make sure that WA can stay strong and resilient no matter the global supply shocks that may occur. And so, for example, while we have Pfizer behind us that's closing in 2023, our critical manufacturing and strategic fund will help make sure we support small and medium businesses in providing critical goods to the state of Western Australia, such as personal protective equipment. We want to make sure we help incentivise the production of locally manufactured goods that help keep our hospitals operating, for example. So that means things like gowns, masks, face shields, gloves. We think it's important now more than ever that WA has the capacity to manufacture those critical goods right here in our state to not only underwrite our health system and keep our state safe, in particular during COVID-19, but help make sure we future-proof Western Australia for any global supply shocks that might come over the years ahead. The Liberal Party has a plan not only for the next 4 years, but for the decades to come. We know how important it is to make sure that through a fund like this, we help incentivise those small and medium-sized businesses to not only create thousands of local jobs here in Western Australia, but help make sure that WA is a resilient state well into the future. We'll also establish a Premier's Advisory Council to make sure that we're guided by the very best brains, the very best and brightest minds across strategic industries so that we can keep WA at the forefront of any future challenges and help prepare our state as best as possible for any global concerns that may arise. We want to make sure we attract those critical and strategic manufacturers here to our state. When COVID-19 hit in the peak of the pandemic, what we found is that Australia, there was no manufacturer of PPE outside of a small operation in rural Victoria. I don't want, and the Liberals don't want, WA to ever be exposed like that again when it comes to manufacturing personal protective equipment for our health system. The Liberals want to make sure that we help keep our state safe, secure through the pandemic and beyond. And that's why this critical manufacturing and strategic investment fund here today is so important to the future of Western Australia and will go a long way to help create 200,000 new jobs as part of the Liberal Party plan for a safer, smarter today and a better, brighter tomorrow. I'll ask Tony Kristovic to speak more about what this means, particularly for those in the health sector.
Thank you. There's been a lot of debate since the pandemic hit the world about supply chains and about the availability of critical equipment. Obviously, we know about the PPE, and the AMA has come out frequently to say that Australia, and particularly Western Australia, isn't prepared, that our health professionals aren't being given access to the right protective equipment, that there are shortages, that the government is stockpiling and not sharing the best equipment with them, because we know that the supply chains aren't working well. We know that the pandemic has continued to create that as a problem, but we also know that there are other global headwinds, and we need to be conscious of the political environment around the world and the availability of important critical equipment here in Western Australia. And we're making this commitment today to make sure that in the future that this equipment is manufactured here in Western Australia, and so that it's available to our health professionals. We know that the PPE has been a significant problem, but there are many other problems. There are small businesses out there who are struggling to get equipment to run their small businesses. Their supply chains have dried up, and it's going to be a long time before they can get themselves on their feet. So it's really critical that we put this together, and one of the first things that the Premier's Critical and Strategic Manufacturing Council will do will be focusing on the PPE, on the gloves, the masks, and all of the important things that our health professionals need, because that's our starting point. And then, of course, it'll broaden out from there to make sure that other critical equipment is manufactured here in Western Australia. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tony. I have to say, just further to that before we take questions, what we found during the pandemic is that when it came to pharmaceuticals and PPE, Western Australia was at the end of the line. Australia, in a global context, is already considered a very small market, and WA was an even smaller market within it, and our distance made it very difficult to secure the necessary PPE. And so it's important that we know that we're going to have to live with COVID for some time, but that we need to make sure WA is future-proofed for the long term, and that's exactly why it's important that we manufacture these critical and strategic goods right here in WA.
Why is this place closing down, and would your fund stop that from happening?
Well, Pfizer's closing down here. They make at the moment a number of pharmaceuticals and treatments. They've made a decision to move their operations, as I understand, likely overseas. Our fund will make sure that we help support small and local businesses. Pfizer don't make PPE in that case, but what we're drawing to the attention of the people of Western Australia is that without a plan to make sure we have standalone resiliency in our state, we lose people like companies like Pfizer, we lose the BP oil refinery, and WA becomes much more exposed. And so our fund, whilst it doesn't underwrite billion-dollar companies like Pfizer, will go a long way to making sure that small and medium-sized companies here in WA are attracted to setting up their manufacturing hubs here in Western Australia, and that we create thousands of local jobs.
When it comes to those low-grade items, though, like gloves and masks, I mean, they're manufactured in their billions in less developed economies. How would something like that be viable here without just living on subsidies?
Well, what we do know is that we also need to bring the cost of energy down. And you're right, let's use nitrile gloves as an example. I'm a volunteer ambulance officer. I know, and Amanda Sue is a intensive care unit nurse, and we know that nitrile gloves, for example, are largely manufactured at the moment in Malaysia. What we need to do here is not only attract small and medium-sized companies to set up their manufacturing hubs in Western Australia, but we also need to give them cheaper energy costs as well. And so we've announced better competition in the retail electricity space for small businesses, so they can lower their energy costs. And we've also announced a payroll tax reform to make sure that we're not penalising businesses for their success. As part of the Liberal Party plan and our economic vision for the future, we want to make sure that WA is the lowest taxing state in the country. We've announced our plan and our vision for where we want to take Western Australia over the next 4 years of government and the decades to come. This is an important part of that. But in contrast, the Labor Party has no plan. The Labor Party let Pfizer go without any help whatsoever, without approaching them to see what could be done to keep them here. A key pharmaceutical manufacturer we've lost. We've lost the BP oil refinery. WA continues to be exposed when we should be coming together to be more resilient, and it's important that the government helps as much as we can those small and medium businesses to do that, to make sure that WA is not exposed. The Liberal Party has a plan to make sure we are resilient, to help create thousands of local jobs, and in contrast, the Labor Party has let many critical manufacturers leave our state.
So you'll be lowering business tax and providing incentives for small business startups. You've promised at least 5 times the amount of spending Labor has. How are you going to pay for all this without sending us back to deficit?
Well, we'll make sure that we keep a surplus each and every year. Our costings will be released, as is the tradition, in the last week before the election, so that everyone has a full understanding about what it is that the Liberal Party is taking to the people of Western Australia as part of our economic plan. But we commit to make a surplus each and every year. At the moment, the Labor Party has grown debt to the point where it's the highest amount per capita than anywhere else in the country. Labor's debt has grown from $39.3 billion, and it's grown quite significantly over the forward estimates now as well. So we need to make sure that we have a responsible economic plan, of which we do. All our policies are costed, and you'll see our costings as they are released closer to the election date. But we make sure, more than ever, that we also maintain an operating surplus each and every year.
So given the huge boost in spending then, where are the cuts coming, or where are the taxes coming?
Well, we're not going to, unlike the Labor Party, who's tried to introduce new taxes a number of times and has increased the cost of household bills each and every year by more than $850. The Liberal Party is not going to increase household bills, and we're not going to introduce any new fees or charges. It's important, and we're not going to introduce any new taxes. What we'll do is make sure that our funding commitments are absolutely costed appropriately, and you'll see our costings as they're released in the week closer to the election.
On contact tracing, there's been some expanded rules for hospitality sectors and supermarkets, etc. Is it too cumbersome, do you think?
I've seen the announcement made by the government, and the Liberal Party supports that wholeheartedly. Any measure that's helped, informed by the Chief Health Officer, to help keep Western Australians safe, the Liberal Party wholeheartedly supports and endorses every step of the way. I'd like to see Dr. Robertson out there to the people of Western Australia, available to the media to explain the basis by which that decision's been made. We'd like to see the health advice be released to the people of Western Australia who've done all the heavy lifting in adhering to the restrictions. That's exactly what we'd do in government. We'd make the Chief Health Officer available to the media and the people of Western Australia to provide that explanation. But any decision that's been informed by the Chief Health Officer's advice, we support 100%.
Do you think there should be some sort of trade-off for these restrictions, like bringing in stage 5 or something like that?
Well, ultimately, all of us want to get to the point where we are no longer exposed to the threat of COVID-19. The decision made today helps hopefully improve contact tracing. I hope to see a better app as time goes on, one that I think can be done in a smarter way. I do hope we look to new technologies, ones that have rolled out, for example, in Singapore, where you get a tag basically, and it just registers you with every outlet that you go into, so it's not incumbent on the person to tag in themselves. It just happens in a passive manner. I think we can learn from jurisdictions like Singapore, where they've done things in a very smart way. But anything that helps keep West Australians safe is something we support wholeheartedly. I think all of us want to make sure we can do it in the smartest possible way.
You mentioned that you're a critical care nurse. What hospital are you working at the moment, and are you planning to work through as your continuing campaign?
I work at the moment at Hollywood Private Hospital Intensive Care Unit, and at the moment I've cut down to 2 12-hour shifts a week. Just finished nights, a little bit fuzzy, but campaigning is hard work. It's these guys are at it 24/7, and I'll be putting in 100% every minute that I'm available. Yeah.
Your husband's made some pretty extreme comments about homosexuality in terms of having homosexuals cleansed and healed. Is that your view?
Well, can I just say that we've addressed a number of issues that have been raised about candidate spouses in the past. I think what's happened is that we have an outstanding candidate here in Amanda Sue, who's working very hard for her community and continues to do so as a nurse in intensive care at Hollywood Private Hospital.
Can she not speak for herself?
I think that's important that we continue to talk about the critical strategic manufacturing fund that we've announced here today.
Your extreme views about homosexuality being cleansed, disturbingly distressing lifestyle is some of the words that her husband's used. Is that appropriate?
Well, I'm not aware of that, and ultimately what we're here today to do is talk about this important fund that we've announced here today. Amanda Sue is an amazing frontline healthcare worker who's doing so much to help her community and is standing in the district of Victoria Park, working very hard, cutting down on her shifts so she can get out there and talk to as many people as possible. That's exactly what we're focusing on. Obviously, any comments made by third parties are for them to be responsible for. What we have here today is an outstanding announcement to help make sure WA is much more resilient in the future shocks that may come right across the pandemic and beyond.
Surely the Liberal Party doesn't condone those comments.
Well, I've not seen the comments, to be fair. I need to familiarise ourselves with them going forward, but ultimately what we're here today to do is talk about this announcement.
How can you be confident in your vetting process if you're being told by the media day after day about your candidates and their, the comments that are being made by those candidates?
Well, these comments that you reference haven't been made by the candidates.
Well, she is married to a pastor that's made pretty disturbing comments about homosexuality.
Well, I think that's probably something that needs to be responded to by that individual. I think we all understand that no matter the relationships that we're in or the like, that each person is independent and holds their views. I'm not familiar with those comments, to be fair, but ultimately what I know more than anything else is that Amanda Sue is here as a frontline ICU nurse, and that's why I'm so proud to stand with her in this announcement here today.
Why can't we hear her views then?
Well, I think it's important that we talk about this announcement here today.
That's not very fair to the people of WA who are about to go to an election and vote for someone. Shouldn't they hear their views?
Well, I think I welcome Amanda Sue talking about it, and we will as time goes on, as she gets out there in the community right across Victoria Park. She's talking to as many people as possible right now. She's just come off night shift and getting out there amongst the community. We're here today to talk about the Critical Manufacturing and Strategic Fund to make sure we can help make sure WA is as resilient as possible into the future. Those comments have not been made by a Liberal Party candidate. Let's be absolutely clear here. And the candidates standing with us here today are all here as committed individuals who want to make sure they can help make their community the very best that it can be.
Are you going to gag all of the candidates?
Well, our candidates are out there each and every day talking to the people of Western Australia about the issues that matter most to them. I think in the issues when it comes to Liberal Party policy or anything like that, we're here to talk about those issues right now and this important announcement we've made today. Thanks very much, everybody.